see who hops into chat, and then we'll get started on reading. Just fixing settings and things. Let's see if this is... YouTube's frozen. That's always good. I love when that happens. Alright, it looks like it worked. Let's put this... There we go. Alright, the rest of that can wait. Everything else is published, so we're good. I'm just chilling for a minute or two, see who hops in. Good morning, Jeff. Hopefully everybody's doing well. My eyes feel like they're on fire, and I don't know why. I've been getting more sleep than normal lately, and my body's like, how dare you sleep? What? We don't sleep. Alright. Let's go over here. We'll get started at 11 since I booted up a little bit early. Give folks time to show up. Here we go. Been a while since we've read some Tolkien. Be good to get back into it. I'll go ahead and add all the tags and everything. Where's it? There it is. Silmarillion, we're on part 7. The Silmarillion, part 7. The Lands of Beleriand. I think this one's going to be a lot more geography, given the title of this chapter. He's gonna probably go on some rants about some mountains and some rivers. Hey, Nacho. Hey, Cygnus. I tried to message you, Nacho, but it wouldn't let me on Discord. So I sent you a friend request so we could message, so be sure to check that out at some point. Alright, I think all that's good. Just wasting time, trying to let folks hop in. Okay. Hopefully everybody's doing well. I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee, hoping it finally wakes me up. Everybody heard about Pokemon Snap? I'm so excited it's back! I'm so excited. Oh my god. I really liked Pokemon Snap growing up. I owned a Nintendo 64 just for that game. It was great. I'm excited to see a new version of it. That looks so much fun. Hello, Rice. Yes, I have my Silent Hill hoodie on, which you really can't see very well because my room is so dark. Let me see if I can brighten this a little bit. It helps a little bit. There's the seal of Metatron. Hey, Phil. Yeah. Alright, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah, I get that feeling, Nacho. It's been a rough time for folks. I get you. I've been real off and distracted lately, but I'm getting there, you know, day at a time. So this is chapter 14 of Beleriand and its realms. Beleriand, if you'll remember, is the fancy not continent really, I guess country? Kind of above Middle-earth where a bunch of elves and dwarves are hanging out. Hey, Akatsuki! So yeah, I think we're gonna discuss the land, I guess. So, here we go. This is the fashion of the lands into which the Noldor came, in the north of the western regions of Middle-earth, in the ancient days. And here also is told of the manner in which the chieftains of the Eldar held their lands and the leaguer upon Morgoth after the Dagor Algareb, the 3rd battle in the wars of Beleriand. In the north of the world, Melkor had, in the ages past, reared Ered Engren, the Iron Mountains, as a fence to his citadel of Utumno, and they stood upon the borders of the regions of everlasting cold in a great curve from east to west. The sound is staticky? Huh, I wonder... Let me try... Does it sound any better? Is that any better, or is it still staticky? In the meanwhile, I'm gonna look up a map of Beleriand, which I probably should have done earlier. Since all we're doing right now is talking about... Oh, yes, this is a good one. This is from the Atlas. Oh, no. Let me know if that helped the sound at all. I don't want to replace Mike. Be good, Mike. Work already. No, I was trying to... No, I don't want that image. Oh, God. What's happened? Oh, no! No! Why? Why is the... What? No, that's not supposed to be the map. What? How is the map there twice now? What has happened? This is... Okay, that's not what I... Oh, I see what happened. Okay, I need to delete this. Oops. And then add image, add source, new. Oh man, I've totally messed this up. I'm gonna have to fix everything later. Where is my backdrop? Where'd it go? I guess I'll worry about it later. Oh well, we don't have a backdrop anymore. That's okay. So this is a map of Beleriand. I imagine it's kind of hard to read. Maybe I can make it a little bigger. There we go. That's probably good enough, I guess. Is the sound better? Okay. I don't want to start reading again unless... I wish I could hear... I mean, I guess I could try and go to the page and see how... There's gonna be an echo, but it'll only be for a second. Every once in a while, my mic decides to give me problems, but it'd been a while. I thought it was fixed, but maybe it's not. I'm just cursed. All technology around me must break. Okay, it sounds normal on my end. Weird. I do not know why some people are hearing static and others aren't, because when I play it, every once in a while, my mic... Huh, there is a sound in the background. It decides to give me problems, but it's been a while. I thought it was fixed, but maybe it's not. I'm just perfect. What could that sound be? Let me... Alright, there is a sound in the background. There's gonna be like a triple... Oh. It still is not going to where we need it to be. Is the sound gone? This is hilarious. Why are you like this? Sounds like a recording of me. Oh, is it done? Is it gone? Oh, good. Thank God. Because that was going to be annoying. Let me move that. All my figurines are now thrown everywhere. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry, figurines. Alright, so don't know why that happened, but clearly, hopefully, it is now done with being stupid. Get rid of all that. So, there's your map. So, I think he's just going to describe a bunch of shit in the area. So, let's start. I'll start again from the beginning of in the north. In the north of the world, Melkor had, in the ages past, reared Ered Engren, the Iron Mountains, as a fence to his citadel of Utumno, and they stood upon the borders of the regions of everlasting cold in a great curve from east to west. Behind the walls of Ered Engren in the west, where they bent back northwards, Melkor built another fortress as a defense against assault that might come from Valinor. And when he came back to Middle-earth, as has been told, he took up abode in the endless dungeons of Angband, the Hells of Iron. For in the War of the Powers, the Valar, in their haste to overthrow him in his great stronghold of Utumno, did not wholly destroy Angband, nor search out all its deepest places. Beneath Ered Engren, he made a great tunnel which issued south of the mountains, and there he made a mighty gate. But above this gate, and behind it, even to the mountains, he piled the thunderous towers of Thangorodrim that were made of the ash and slag of his subterranean furnaces, and the vast refuse of his tunnelings. They were black and desolate and exceedingly lofty, and smoke issued from their tops, dark and foul upon the northern sky. Before the gates of Angband, filth and desolation spread southward for many miles over the wide plain of Ardgalan. But after the coming of the sun... Hello.
Hi.
I don't think you're allowed to be in here.
Are you reading Lord of the Rings?
There's a camera. You need to go. Mommy, Daddy don't want you to be on camera. I am reading The Lord of the Rings, sort of, yes.
I heard you're talking about the map.
Uh-huh. Go away.
Tell them about how amazing Legolas is.
Okay. My 12-year-old niece says I need to tell you about how amazing Legolas is. Where was I? Filth, desolation. But after the coming of the sun, rich grass arose there, and while Angband was besieged and its gates shut, there were green things even among the pits and broken rocks before the doors of hell. To the west of Thangorodrim lay Hissilome. I think it's Hissilome, the land of mist, for so it was named by the Noldor in their own tongue because of the clouds that Morgoth sent thither during their first encampment. Hithlum it became in the tongue of the Sindar that dwelt in those regions. It was a fair land while the siege of Angband lasted, although its air was cool and winter there was cold. In the west it was bound by arid Loman, the echoing mountains that marched near the sea, and in the east and south by the great curve of arid Wethrin, the shadowy mountains that looked across Ardgalan and the Vale of Sirion. So he's literally just describing what his fictional world looks like right now. But it's basically that map there, the mountains up at the top and, you know, where all the fortresses are. Hopefully you can read it, but if you can't, I'm sure you can Google it and find a bigger one. Fingolfin and Fingon, his son, held Hithlum, and the most part of Fingolfin's folk dwelt in Mithram, about the shores of the Great Lake. To Fingon was assigned Dorloman, that lay to the west of the mountains of Mithram. But their chief fortress was at Ethel Sirion, in the east of arid Wethrin, whence they kept watch upon Ardgalan, and their cavalry rode upon that plain ever to the shadow of Thangorodrim, for from few their horses had increased swiftly, and the grass of Ardgalan was rich and green. Of those horses many of the sires came from Valinor, and they were given to Fingolfin by Maedhros in atonement for his losses, for they had been carried by ship to Loskar. So these are fancy magic horses, who are probably going to end up leading to the fancy magic horses of the Lord of the Rings, like, what's his name? Gandalf's horse. Can't remember his name. It's something magic-y. West of Dorloman, beyond the echoing mountains, which south of the First of Drengist marched inland, lay Nevrast, that signifies the hither shore in the Sindarin tongue. That name was given at first to all the coastlands south of the Firth, but afterwards only to the land where shores lay between Drengist and Mount Taras. There for many years was the realm of Turgon the Wise, son of Fingolfin, bound by the sea, and by arid Loman, and by the hills which continued the walls of arid Wethrin westward, from Ivrin to Mount Taras, which stood upon a promontory. Shadowfax, thank you, that's the name. By some, Nevrast was held to belong rather to Beleriand than to Hithlum, for it was a milder land, watered by the wet winds from the sea and sheltered from the cold north winds that blew over Hithlum. It was a hollow land, surrounded by mountains and great coast cliffs higher than the plains behind, and no river flowed thence. And there was a great mare in the midst of Nevrast, with no certain shores, being encircled by the wide marshes. Linewen was the name of that mare, because of the multitude of birds that dwelt there, and of such as love tall reeds and shallow pools. At the coming of the Noldor, many of the Grey Elves lived in Nevrast near to the coasts, and especially about Mount Taras in the southwest. For to that place Ulmo and Ose had been wont to come in days of old. All that people took Turgon for their lord, and the mingling of the Noldor and the Sindar came to pass soonest there, and Turgon dwelt long in the halls he named Vinyamar, under Mount Taras beside the sea. South of Ardgalan, the Great Highland named Dorthonion stretched for 60 leagues from west to east. Great pine forests it bore, especially on its northern and western sides. By gentle slopes from the plain it rose to a bleak and lofty land, where lay many tarns at the feet of bare tors, whose heads were higher than the peaks of arid Wethrin. but southward where it looked towards Doriath, it fell suddenly in dreadful precipices. From the northern slopes of Dorthonion, Angrod and Agnor, sons of Finarfin, looked out over the fields of Ardgallen, and were the vassals of their brother Finrod, Lord of Nagathron. Oh, thank you, Nacho. It's very kind of you. Beleriand is Wales. No wonder it gets destroyed. Oh, no. There's also actually another map here drawn by, of course, Tolkien himself, that focuses less on the physical land and more on what elf rules that land. I don't think this map has the rulers on it, but basically each elf kind of has its own territory, and that's what he's sort of marking out here in this story. This elf lives over here, this elf lives over there. It's not that big of a worry. Their people were few, for the land was barren, and the Great Highlands behind were deemed to be a bulwark that Morgoth would not lightly seek to cross. Between Dorthonion and the Shadowy Mountains there was a narrow vale, whose sheer walls were clad with pines, but the vale itself was green, for the river Sirion flowed through it, hastening towards Beleriand. Finrod held the pass of Sirion, and upon the Isle of Tol Sirion in the midst of the river he built a mighty watchtower, Minas Tirith. But after Nagathron was made, he committed that fortress mostly to the keeping of Orodreth, his brother. Remember Minas Tirith? That is the name of a fancy, important city that comes later in the human world. This is not the same one, because this whole continent's going to be destroyed. But I'm pretty sure it's named for this place. How would I rate my reading and comprehension? Well, I've always kind of had, like, I was the person in elementary school that read at a college level, but there's only so far you can push that, you know? Once you're at college level, how farther do you push it? I have a pretty decent, understanding. I definitely struggle with some stuff. Older, mythology books take me a long time to get through. But I have a lot of practice reading Tolkien from my years in college, so I'm pretty good at following his patterns of speech. He's very poetic and long-winded. After Nagathron was made... Oh, I already read that. Now the great and fair country of Beleriand lay on either side of the mighty river Sirion, renowned in song, which rose at Ethel Sirion and skirted the edge of Ardgallen, ere he plunged through the pass, becoming ever fuller with the streams of the mountains. Thence he flowed south for 130 leagues, gathering the waters of many tributaries, until with a mighty flood he reached his many mouths in sandy delta in the Bay of Balar. And following Sirion from north to south, there lay upon the right hand in West Beleriand the forest of Brethil, between Sirion and Teglin, and the realm of Nagathron, between Teglin and Narog. And the river Narog rose in the falls of Ivrin, in the southern face of Dorloman, and flowed some 80 leagues ere he joined Sirion in Nantethrin, the land of willows. South of Nantethrin was a region of meads, filled with many flowers, where few folk dwelt, and beyond lay the marshes and isles of reeds about the mouths of Sirion, and the sands of his delta empty of all living things save birds of the sea. Literally, this is all just, this was here, and that was there, and this was this river, and this river went over here, and these elves lived there. Like, it's just, he's really just painting the picture of his universe. So if you're having trouble imagining all this, that's okay. He's describing an entire continent. It's a lot. The realm of Nagathron extended also west of Narog to the river Nenning, that reached the sea at Elgarest, and Finrod became the overlord of all the elves of Beleriand between Sirion and the sea, save only in Falas. Though there dwelt those of the Sindar who still loved ships, and Círdan the shipbuilder was their lord. But between Círdan and Finrod there was a friendship and alliance, and with the aid of the Noldor, the havens of Berthombar and Elgarest were built anew. Behind their great walls they became fair towns and harbors with quays and piers of stone. Upon the cape west of Elgarest, Finrod raised the tower of Bered Nimros to watch the western sea, though needlessly as it proved. For at no time ever did Morgoth essay to build ships or to make war by sea. Water all his servants shunned, and to the sea none would willingly go nigh, save in dire need. With the aid of the elves and of the havens, some of the folk of Nagathron built new ships, and they went forth and explored the great Isle of Balar, thinking there to prepare a last refuge if evil came. But it was not their fate that they should ever dwell there. Tolkien likes describing things before he smashes it all. Yeah, and I don't know if he's anything, I don't want to compare myself to Tolkien, but I find it's easier for me to keep track of my own fictional worlds if I actually write out their history. Like, even if it's not something that's entertaining to read, having it on paper helps you keep track of who lived where and what happened here and that kind of thing. And I wonder if, to some extent, since these were stories he did not publish, and he just kept them as part of their writings, if it weren't, in a way, note-taking for him to just keep this history so that he would keep track of it, Thus the realm of Finrod was the greatest by far, though he was the youngest of the great lords of the Noldor, Fingolfin, Fingon, and Maedhros, and Finrod Felagund. But Fingolfin was held overlord of all the Noldor, and Fingon after him, though their own realm was but the northern land of Hithlum, yet their people were the most hardy and valiant, most feared by the orcs, and most hated by Morgoth. Upon the left hand of Sirion lay East Beleriand, at its widest 100 leagues from Sirion to Gelion and the borders of Osiriand. And first, between Sirion and Mendeb, lay the empty land of Dimbar, under the peaks of the Crissaegrim, abode of eagles. Between Mendeb and the upper waters of Esgalduin lay the no-land of Nanda-Gorthreb, and that region was filled with fear, for upon its one side the power of Melian fenced to the north march of Dariath, but upon the other side the sheer precipices of Ered Gogaroth, mountains of terror, fell down from high Dithornion. Thither, as it was earlier told, Ungoliant had fled from the whips of the Balrogs, and there she dwelt a while, filling the ravines with her deadly gloom, and there still... Ugh, keep getting frickin' phone calls from bots. Where was my... And there still, when she had passed away, her foul offspring lurked and wove their evil nets. And the thin waters that spilled from Ered Gogaroth were defiled and perilous to drink, for the hearts of those that tasted them were filled with shadows of madness and despair. All living things else shunned that land, and the Noldor would pass through Nan Dungortheb, only at great need, by paths near to the borders of Dariath and furthest from the Haunted Hills. Haunted Hills. That way was made long before, in the time ere Morgoth returned to Middle-earth, and if one fared upon it, he came eastward to Jesus, I am friggin' need practice saying all these frickin' words. Esgalduin, where still there stood in the days of the siege the stone bridge of Eantiar. Tolkien, why do you do this to me? Eantiar. Thence he passed through Dor Dinnan, the Silent Land, and crossing the Arosiak, which signifies the fords of Eris, came to the north marches of Beleriand, where dwelt the sons of Fëanor. Southward lay the guarded woods of Dariath, abode of Thingol the Hidden King, into whose realm none passed, save by his will. Its northern and lesser part, the forest of Neldoreth, was bounded east and south by the dark river Esgalduin, which bent westward in the midst of the land, and between Eros and Esgalduin lay the denser and greater woods of Region. Upon the southern bank of Esgalduin, where it turned westward towards Sirion, were the caves of Menegroth, and all Dariath lay east of Sirion save for a narrow region of woodland, between the meeting of Teglin and Sirion and the Mares of Twilight. By the people of Dariath this wood was called Nivrim, the West March. Great oak trees grew there, and it was also encompassed within the girdle of Melian, that so some portion of Sirion which she loved in reverence of Ulmo should be wholly under the power of Thingol. In the southwest of Dariath, where Eros flowed into Sirion, lay great pools and marshes on either side of the river, which halted there in his course and strayed into many channels. That region was named Aelin Ulial, the Twilight Mares, for they were wrapped in mists, and the enchantment of Dariath lay over them. Now all the northern part of Beleriand sloped southward to this point, and then for a while was plain, and the flood of Sirion was stayed. But south of Aelin Ulial... Oh, these words are tongue twisters. South of Aelin Ulial, the land felt suddenly and steeply, and all the lower fields of Sirion were divided from the upper fields by this fall, which to one looking from the south northward appeared as an endless chain of hills, running from Elgarest beyond Narog, in the west to Ammon Arab in the east, within far sight of Gelion. Narog came through these hills in a deep gorge and flowed over rapids, but had no fall, and on its western bank the land rose into the great wooded highlands of Tauren Faroth. On the west side of this gorge, where the short and foaming stream Ringwill tumbled headlong into Narog from the high Faroth, Finrod established Nagathron. But some 25 leagues east of the gorge of Nagathron, Cirion fell from the north in a mighty fall below the mares, and then he plunged suddenly underground into great tunnels that the weight of his falling waters delved, and he issued again 3 leagues southward with great noise and smoke through rocky arches at the foot of the hills, which were called the Gates of Cirion. I wouldn't call this entertaining reading, and yet he manages to make geography very pretty. Like, it's very poetic, and it has a nice tempo and pattern to it, but he's literally just saying this river goes here, and it breaks with this river, and between those 2 rivers was this forest, and then they went down here. It's really kind of funny. Like, you wouldn't actually write a book like this. Like, if you were trying to create a fictional world and describe your world, you wouldn't just describe the map this way, unless you wanted to drive everyone off. This defining fall was named Andram, the Long Wall, from Nagathron to Ramdal, the wall's end in East Beleriand. But in the east it became ever less sheer, for the Vale of Gelion sloped steadily southward, and Gelion had neither fall nor rapids throughout his course, but was ever swifter than was Cirion. Between Ramdal and Gelion there stood a single hill of great extent and gentle slopes, but seeming mightier than it was, for it stood alone. And that hill was named Ammon Arab. Upon Ammon Arab died Denethor, lord of the Nandor that dwelt in Cirion, who marched to the aid of Thingol against Morgoth in those days when the orcs first came down in force and broke the starlit peace of Beleriand. And upon that hill Maedhros dwelt after the great defeat. But south of the Andram, between Cirion and Gelion, was a wild land of tangled forest in which no folk went, save here and there a few dark elves wandering. Torum Duniath it was named, the forest between the rivers. Gelion was a great river, and he rose in 2 sources, and it had at first 2 branches. Little Gelion that came from the hill of Himring, and Greater Gelion that came from Mount Rerir. From the meeting of his arms he flowed south for 40 leagues before he found his tributaries, and before he found the sea he was twice as long as Cirion, though less wide and full, for more rain fell in Hithrum and Dorthonion, whence Cirion drew his waters, than in the east. From Ered Luin flowed the 6 tributaries of Gelion: Ascar, that was after named Rathlorian, Thalos, Legolin, Brithor, Dulwen, and Adurant, swift and turbulent streams falling steeply from the mountains. And between Ascar in the north and Adurant in the south, and between Gelion and Ered Luin, lay the far green country of Osiriand, the land of 7 rivers. Now at a point nearly midway in its course, the stream of Adurant divided and then joined again, and the island that its waters enclosed was named Tolgallan, the Green Isle. There Beren and Luthien dwelt after their return. In Osirion dwelt the Green Elves in the protection of their rivers, for after Cirion, Ulmo loved Gelion above all waters of the western world. The woodcraft of the elves of Osirion was such that a stranger might pass through their land from end to end and see none of them. They were clad in green in spring and summer, and the sound of their singing could be heard even across the waters of Gelion. Wherefore the Noldor named the country Lindon, the land of music, and the mountains beyond they named Ered Lindon, for they first saw them from Osiriand. East of Dorthonion, the marches of Beleriand were most open to attack, and only hills of no great height guarded the Vale of Gelion from the north. In that region, upon the march of Maedhros and in the lands behind, dwelt the sons of Fëanor with many people, and their riders passed over often the vast northern plain, Lothland, the wide and empty east of Ardgallan, lest Morgoth should attempt any sortie towards East Beleriand. The chief citadel of Maedhros was upon the hill of Himring, the Evercold, and that was wide-shouldered, bare of trees, and flat upon its summit, surrounded by many lesser hills. Between Himring and Dorthonion was a pass, exceedingly steep upon the west, and that was the pass of Aeglon, and was a gate unto Doriath, and a bitter wind blew ever through it from the north. But Celogorm and Carufin fortified Aeglon and held it with great strength, and all the land of Himland southward between the river Aros that rose in Dorthonion and his tributary Selon that came from Himrin. Between the arms of Gelion was the Ward of Magelor, and here in one place the hills failed altogether. There it was that the orcs came into East Beleriand before the third battle. Therefore the Noldor held strength of cavalry in the plains at that place, and the people of Caranthir fortified the mountains to the east of Maglor's Gap. There Mount Rurir, and about it many lesser heights, stood out from the main range of Ered Linden westward, and in the angle between Rurir and Ered Linden there was a lake, shadowed by mountains on all sides save the south. That was Lake Helivorn, deep and dark, and beside it Caranthir had his abode. But all the great land between Gelion and the mountains, and between Rurir and River Askar, was called by the Noldor Thargelion, which signifies the land beyond Gelion, or Dor Caranthir, the land of Caranthir, and it was here that the Noldor first met the dwarves. But Thargelion was before called by the Grey Elves Talath Ruren, the East Vale. Thus the sons of Fëanor under Maedhros were the lords of East Beleriand, but their people were in that time mostly in the north of the land, and southward they rode only to hunt in the green woods. But there Amrod and Emras had their abode, and they came seldom northward while the siege lasted. And there also of the elf lords would ride at times, even from afar, for the land was wild but very fair. Of these, Finrod Felagund came most often, for he had great love of wandering, and he came even into Assyriand and won the friendship of the green elves. But none of the Noldor went ever over Ered Linden while their realm lasted, and little news and late came into Beleriand what passed in the regions of the east. Oh, thank you, Nacho. Whew! Oh, I scared Bob. I'm sorry, Bob. Come back. So, I'm going to pull up another map just to discuss what the major portion of that whole bit was about. Let's see, Tolkien map of Beleriand lords, maybe? Because in his book, he has written where all the various elf lords live in this area. I am not seeing that map online, unfortunately. Oh, here it is. Yeah, let me save and pull that up. Here we go. Oh, it's so small now. Okay, so basically he just described all these different rivers and mountains and forests and things, but the important part is which elf lords live where. So like Círdan, the boat elf lord, is over here by the ocean. Then up Fingon is up in these mountains. Let's see, Amrod and Egnor are over in Dorthonion over here. Maedhros is over here. Caligorm and Carufin, who are both going to be assholes, are below the mountains. Amrod and Amras, who I think are the twins, are in the fields over there. Thingol and Melian have their secret kingdom in the middle. Caranthir is over by the rivers. I think that's all the important people. But yeah, so basically he just spent a whole chapter saying, this is what the geography looks like. These are the places where the various elves live, and kind of setting the stage for what is inevitably going to happen as the story continues. You know, as elves fight over territory or fight in different places and that kind of thing. I'm just going to leave that map right there. All right. So now we are on Chapter 15 of the Noldor in Beleriand. It has been told how by the guidance of Ulmo, Turgon of Nevras discovered the hidden vale of Tumladen, and that, as was after known, lay east of the upper waters of Sirion, in a ring of mountains tall and sheer, and no living thing came there save the eagles of Thorondor. So to remind you, last time there were some elves that had dreams. They had dreams about, I want to make a cool city. And so the god of the sea gave them some dreams and said, hey, if you go to this place, it would be a great place for a city. Turgon was one of them, and he found a secret mountain cave. It's like a valley within a bunch of mountains that nobody can get to, and he found the secret entrance into it, so he's going to build a secret city in the mountains. There was a deep way under the mountains delved in the darkness of the world by waters that flowed out to join the streams of Sirion, and this way Turgon found, and so came to the green plain amid the mountains, and saw the island hill that stood there of hard, smooth stone. And for the Vale had been a great lake in ancient days. Then Turgon knew he'd found the place of his desire, and he resolved to build there a fair city, a memorial of Tirion upon Tuna. But he returned to Nevrast and remained there in peace, though he pondered ever in his thought how he should accomplish his design. All these elves just want to build cities. Now after the Dagor Algareb, which was the great battle, the unquiet that Ulmo set in his heart returned to him, and he summoned many of the hardiest and most skilled of his people, and led them secretly to the hidden vale, and there they began the building of the city that Turgon had devised. They set a watch all about it, that none might come upon their work from without, and the power of Ulmo that ran in Sirion protected them. But Turgon dwelt still for the most part in Nevrast, until it came to pass that at last the city was full wrought, after 52 years of secret toil. It is said that Turgon appointed its name to be Ungoliant in the speech of the elves of Valinor, the rock of the music of water. For there were fountains upon the hill. But in Sindarin tongue, the name was changed, and it became Gondolin, the hidden rock. Then Turgon prepared to depart from Nevrast and leave his halls in Vinyamar beside the sea. And there Ulmo came to him once again and spoke with him. He said, "Now thou shalt go at last to Gondolin, Turgon, and I will maintain my power in the Vale of Sirion." Oh, that's my medication alarm. I'll take it after. Vale of Sirion. "And in all the waters therein, so that none shall mark thy going, nor shall find there the hidden entrance against thy will. Longest of all the realms of the Eldali shall Gondolin stand against Melkor. But love not too well the works of thy hands and the devices of thy heart. And remember that the true hope of the Noldor lieth in the west and cometh from the sea." So Gondolin's going to be one of the most important and famous elven cities. You may remember in the Lord of the Rings it's mentioned that the sword that Bilbo has and that Gandalf has were made in Gondolin. Ulmo warned Turgon that he also lay under the doom of Mandos, which Ulmo had no power to remove. "Thus it may come to pass," he said, "that the curse of the Noldor shall find thee too ere the end, and treason awake within thy walls. Then they shall be the peril of fire. But if this peril draweth nigh indeed, then even from Nevrast one shall come to warn thee, and from him beyond ruin and fire hope shall be born for elves and men. Leave therefore in this house arms and a sword, that in years to come he may find them, and thus shalt thou know him, and not be deceived." In other words, Ulmo's saying, hey, everything is fucked up here in Middle-earth because of Melkor and curses and people doing stupid shit. But I foretell that in the future, a dude will come to your city with a warning of bad things to come, and you shall know him by his awesome armor and sword that you should leave in this cave. And if he finds the sword and the armor and he shows up, and you'll know it's him. Then Ulmo returned to the sea, and Turgon sent forth all his people, even to a third part of the Noldor of Fingolfin's following, and yet a greater host of the Sindar. And they passed away, company by company, secretly under the shadows of Eredwethrin, and they came unseen to Gondolin, and none knew whither they had gone. And last of all, Turgon arose and went with his household silently through the hills, and past the gates in the mountains, and they were shut behind him. Though many long years none passed inward thereafter, save Hurin and Huro only, and the host of Turgon came never forth again until the year of lamentation, after 350 years and more. But behind the circle of the mountains the people of Turgon grew and throve, and they put forth their skill and labor unceasing, so that Gondolin upon Amoth Gwareth became fair indeed, and fit to compare even with the elven Tirion beyond the sea. High and white were its walls, and smooth its stairs, and tall and strong was the tower of the king. There shining fountains played, and in the courts of Turgon stood images of the trees of old, which Turgon himself wrought with elven craft. And the tree which he made of gold was named Glingol, and the tree whose flowers he made of silver was named Belthil. But fairer than all the wonders of Gondolin was Idril, Turgon's daughter, she that was called Silmarillion the Silverfoot, whose hair was as the gold of Lorelin before the coming of Melkor. Thus Turgon lived long in bliss, but Nevrast was desolate and remained empty of living folk until the ruin of Beleriand. So, in other words, Turgon built his cool fancy city. He told all his cool friends about it. They all snuck away into the secret city and they hid there because, Melkor is being shitty and there's orcs and they didn't want anybody to know where they were, so they just hid in their mountain. And he had a pretty daughter named Idril, whose life is going to suck. Now, while the city of Gondolin was built in secret, Finrod Felagund wrought in the deep places of Nagathron. But Galadriel, his sister, dwelt, as has been told, in Thingonn's realm in Doriath. At times, Melian and Galadriel would speak together of Valinor and the bliss of old. But beyond the dark hour of the death of the trees, Galadriel would not go, but ever fell silent. And on a time, Melian said, "There is some woe that lies upon you and your kin. That I can see in you, but all else is hidden from me. For by no vision or thought can I perceive anything that passed or passes in the west. A shadow lies all the land of Ammon, and reaches far out over the sea. Why will you not tell me more?" "For that woe is past," said Galadriel, "and I would take what joy is here left, untroubled by memory. And maybe there is woe enough yet to come, though still hope may seem bright." Then Melian looked in her eyes and said, "I believe not that the Noldor came forth as messengers of the Valar, as was said at first, not though they came in the very hour of our need. For they speak never of the Valar, nor have their high lords brought any message to Thingol, whether from Manwë or Ulmo, or even from Olwë the king's brother, and his own folk that went over the sea. For what cause, Galadriel, were the high people of the Noldor driven forth as exiles from Aman? Or what evil lies on the sons of Fëanor that they are so haughty and so fell? Do I not strike near the truth?" "Near," said Galadriel, "save that we were not driven forth, but came of our own will, and against that of the Valar. And through great peril, and in despite of the Valar, for this purpose we came, to take vengeance upon Morgoth, and regain what he stole." Then Galadriel spoke to Melian of the Silmarils, and of the slaying of King Finwë at Formenos, but she still said no word of the oath, nor of the kinslaying, nor of the burning of the ships at Losgar. But Melian said, "Now much you tell me, yet more I perceive. A darkness you would cast over the long road from Tirion, but I see evil there which Thingol should learn for his guidance." "Maybe," said Galadriel, "but not of me." Melian spoke then no more of these matters with Galadriel, but she told to King Thingol all she had heard of the Silmarils. "This is a great matter," she said, "greater indeed than the Noldor themselves understand. For the light of Aman and the fate of Arda lie locked now in these things, the work of Fëanor who is gone. They shall not be recovered, I foretell, by any power of the Eldar, and the world shall be broken in battles that are to come, ere they are wrested from Morgoth. See now, Fëanor they have slain, and many another, as I guess. But first of all the deaths they have brought, and yet shall bring, was Finwë your friend. Morgoth slew him ere he fled from Aman." Then Thingol was silent, being filled with grief and foreboding. But at length he said, "Now at last I understand the coming of the Noldor out of the west, at which I wondered much before. Not to our aid did they come, save by chance. For those that remain in Middle-earth the Valar will leave to their own devices, until the uttermost need. For vengeance and redress of their loss the Noldor came. Yet all the more sure shall they be as allies against Morgoth, with whom it is not now to be thought that they shall ever make treaty." But Melian said, "Truly for these causes they came, but for others also. Beware the sons of Fëanor. The shadow of the wrath of the Valar lies upon them. They have done evil, I perceive, both in Aman and to their own kin. A grief, but lulled to sleep, lies between the princes of the Noldor." And Thingol answered, "What is that to me? Of Fëanor I have heard but report, which makes him great indeed. Of his sons I have little heard to my pleasure. Yet they are likely to prove the deadliest foes of our foe. Their swords and their counsels shall have two edges," said Melian, and afterwards they spoke no more of this matter. So, Thingol is the elf guy that got married to the angel lady, sort of, and they made their own little secret kingdom. And when the elves from the West came over, they were like, hey, we're here to help, hi, and didn't really tell them anything that had happened over on the island, you know, they murdered their friends, and they stole some boats, and they did some crimes. Never really explained all that. Galadriel is hanging out with Melian, and some of it kind of comes out, but she doesn't say everything. But Melian, being so smart and wise and perceptive, kind of knows something's up and that there's more to the story. And so she warns her king and says, hey, these guys aren't all good news. Probably bad stuff's gonna happen. And he's like, it's all right. Enemy of my enemy and all that, you know? It'll be fine, he said. It was not fine. It was not long before whispered tales began to pass among the Sindar concerning the deeds of the Noldor ere they came to Beleriand. Certain it is whence they came, and the evil truth was enhanced and poisoned by lies. But the Sindar were yet unwary and trustful of words, and as well may be thought, Morgoth chose them for his first assault of his malice, for they knew him not. And Círdan, hearing these dark tales, was troubled, for he was wise and perceived swiftly that true or false they were put about at this time through malice, though the malice he deemed was that of the princes of the Noldor because of the jealousy of their houses. Therefore he sent messengers to Thingol to tell all he had heard. Yeah, so the fact that they didn't tell the truth is now working against them because Morgoth is spreading lies and making it out to be worse than it was. It chanced that at the time the sons of Finarfin were again the guests of Thingol, for they wished to see their sister Galadriel. Then Thingol, being greatly moved, spoke in anger to Finrod, saying, I'll have you done to me, kinsman, to conceal so great matters— Ill have you done to me, kinsman, to conceal so great matters from me. For now I have learned of all the evil deeds of the Noldor. But Finrod answered, What ill have I done you, lord? Or what evil deed have the Noldor done in all your realm to grieve you? Neither against your kingship, nor against any of your people have they thought evil or done evil. I marvel at you, son of Irwin, said Thingol, that you would come to the board of your kinsmen thus red-handed from the slaying of your mother's kin, and yet say naught in defense nor seek any pardon. Then Finrod was himself troubled, but he was silent, for he could not defend himself, save by bringing charges against the other princes of the Noldor, and that he was loath to do before Thingol. But in Angrod's heart the bitter memory of the words of Caranthir welled up again, and he cried, Lord, I know not what lies you have heard nor whence, but we came not red-handed. Guiltless we came forth, save maybe of folly, to listen to the words of fell Fëanor, and become as if besotted with wine, as but briefly. No evil did we do on our road, but suffered ourselves great wrong and forgave it. For this we are named tale-bearers to you, and treasonable to the Noldor. Untruly as you know, for we have of our loyalty been silent before you, and thus earned your anger. But now these charges are no longer to be borne, and the truth you shall know. Then Angron spoke bitterly against the sons of Fëanor, telling of the blood at Aqualonde, and the doom of Mandos, and the burning of the ships at Loscar. And he cried, Wherefore should we that endured the grinding ice bear the name of kinslayers and traitors? So in other words, you know, there was the two groups. There was Fëanor's family and Fingolfin's family. Fëanor's family was the one that charged ahead and said, and they got angry and they killed some people and stole some boats. The Fingolfin's group came late and they're like, oh no, there's been murder, oh crap, what the hell? And then they were abandoned and left behind and they didn't get any boats, so they had to cross the ice by themselves. So this elf is basically saying, hey, we made the mistake of listening to Fëanor, but we didn't murder anybody, and we didn't steal any boats. We had to walk here across ice. You know, don't accuse us of this stuff. He's very upset. Finrod didn't say anything because he didn't want to speak out against his friends. Yet the shadow of Mandos lies on you also, said Melian. Thingol was long silent ere he spoke. Go now, he said, for my heart is hot within me. Later you may return, if you will, for I will not shut my doors forever against you, my kindred, that were ensnared in the evil you did not aid. With Fingolfin and his people also I will keep friendship, for they have bitterly atoned for such ill as they did. And in our hatred of the power that wrought all this woe, our grief shall be lost. But hear my words. Never again in my ears shall be heard the tongue of those who slew my kin in Aqualonde. Nor in all my realm shall it be openly spoken while my power endures. All the Sindar shall hear my command that they shall neither speak with the tongue of the Noldor nor answer to it. And all as such use it shall be held slayers of kin and betrayers of kin unrepentant. Tolkien's gotta come back to language every time. Every time. Every time. I shall let you, my kin, come back into this house. But if you speak the language of those murderers, I shall banish you forthwith. How dare you? You are not allowed to speak English because English people murdered my cousin. It's such a silly thing to say. Then the sons of Finarfin departed from Menegroth with heavy hearts, perceiving how the words of Mandos would ever be made true, and that none of the Noldor that followed after Fëanor could escape from the shadow that lay upon his house. And it came to pass, even as Thingol had spoken, for the Sindar heard his word, and thereafter throughout Beleriand refused the tongue of the Noldor, and shunned those that spoke it aloud. But the exiles took the Sindarin tongue in all their daily uses, and the high speech of the West was spoken only by the lords of the Noldor among themselves. Yet that speech lived ever as a language of lore, wherever any of that people dwelt. It came to pass that Nagathron was full wrought, and yet Turgon still dwelt in the halls of Vinyamar, and the sons of Finarfin were gathered there to a feast. And Galadriel came from Doriath and dwelt a while in Nagathron. Now King Finrod Felagund had no wife, and Galadriel asked him why this should be. But foresight came upon Felagund as she spoke, and he said, An oath I too shall swear, and must be free to fulfill it and go into darkness. Nor shall anything of my realm endure that a son should inherit. But it is said that not until that hour had such cold thoughts ruled him. For indeed, she who he loved was Amare of the Vanyar, and she went not with him into exile. So in other words, Galadriel was like, hey, Finrod, you gonna get married? And he was like, no, I will never get married. Never. And that's because he left his lady love behind in the other realm. The next story is pretty long, and we're almost at an hour. My voice is a little sore, so we will wait to continue. We will be streaming later today. Probably Persona 5, unless I figure out a different game. I was kind of thinking I wanted to play some horror, but I'm having trouble figuring out what game I'd want to play. I don't think I'm up to playing Haunting Ground. I'm not smart with puzzles today, but thank you for joining me. We'll do more Tolkien next week. We'll be starting a pretty creepy, kind of sad story. Let's see, tonight, 3 p.m. be game stream. Tomorrow we're doing more game and then watching more of The Untamed, which is the Chinese drama, so join Discord if you want to hang out and watch that with us or just chill and have fun. Join the channel if you want to support it and, you know, get cool bonus stuff. There's a bunch of cool stuff you can get for being a member. There's a document in the description that shows you all your bonuses. Follow me on social media if you want to hear me make stupid jokes about things. I think that's everything I got going on right now. Turin? Nah, next chapter is Magellan. And presumably how he fucks up everything. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully y'all have a good day, and I will hopefully see you at about 3 o'clock. Bye.